Slash, the guitarist who turned raw, primal screams into music. A man who took addiction, loss, and loneliness and channeled them into guitar solos powerful enough to make an entire generation drop to their knees. When Guns N' Roses burst onto the scene like a storm, the world saw Axl Rose scream into the mic. But just behind him, half hidden in the shadows, stood Slash, playing as if he were pouring out the last remaining fragments of his soul. He literally died once, his heart stopped. Dragged to the edge by drugs, alcohol, and sorrow, he came back. And when he did, he picked up his guitar and played as if he had never stopped. Not for fame. Not for money. But because it was the only thing that stopped him from vanishing. You might recognize Slash from Sweet Child O' Mine, Welcome to the Jungle, or from the iconic Top Hat and Curls. But you likely don't know about the night his best friend died in his arms. Or the day his stepdaughter passed, while social media erupted with speculation. You don't know how much it cost him just to still be here, to stand, alone, caught between the howls of his past and the roar of the crowd. This is the story of a soul screaming in silence. You're about to see the truth, not the legend on stage, but the man underneath the hat. The one who collapsed once and pulled himself back up using only notes clawed from hell. Early life. Slash wasn't meant to blend in. He was born to feel different. Named Saul Hudson, he entered the world in July 1965 in Hampstead, London, a place where artists, intellectuals, and rebels breathed the same rare air. His father, Anthony Hudson, designed album covers for icons like Neil Young. His mother, Ola Hudson, was a brilliant black American fashion designer who dressed legends like David Bowie, Diana Ross, and Ringo Starr. From the beginning, Slash lived between two worlds that didn't fit together easily. A biracial child navigating the formal whiteness of England and the racially charged atmosphere of America, torn between fine art and chaotic real life. In one interview, Slash said of his father, he was the rebel in the family, went to art school, married a black woman, and became part of rock and roll culture. No one in his family accepted that. His paternal relatives cut them off. At 5 years old, Slash and his family moved to Los Angeles and settled in Laurel Canyon, a 1970s sanctuary for artists. He grew up surrounded by parties, clouds of smoke, flowing booze, rock music, and eccentric personalities. Joni Mitchell, Carly Simon, Jim Morrison, Glenn Frey, they passed through his childhood like faded shadows etched into memory. But behind all that brilliance was a boy no one really saw. As Slash grew older, he grew quieter. Then came the divorce. His mother became increasingly entangled with David Bowie, both professionally and personally. His father began to drink more and drift away. Slash fell into a void with no comfort, no explanations. After the divorce, chaos took over. He bounced between two unstable homes, watching adults drink, argue, and disappear. At school, he was branded a troubled kid, expelled, caught stealing, fighting, detained by police for theft more than once. In his memoir, he wrote that by age 12, he was living like an adult, but with no idea where life was leading. For a while, BMX biking gave him an escape. He immersed himself in stunt riding, downhill racing, freestyle tricks, practicing obsessively. He even competed, gaining some recognition in the LA scene. But that rush was short-lived. It couldn't quiet the long-standing ache inside, the feeling of not belonging anywhere. Then something changed. Slash heard an old Aerosmith vinyl playing. The wild, bluesy, screaming sound of the guitar woke something inside him. He didn't overthink it. He just knew he needed to play. He had no money for lessons, no idea about theory, just an old guitar and a chord book. He started from scratch, practicing 10 to 12 hours a day. His fingers blistered, his wrist ached. But he didn't stop. He trained his ears by rewinding solos from Led Zeppelin, B.B. King, Jeff Beck, Clapton, Joe Perry, Jimi Hendrix, mimicking, then improvising. In the midst of this guitar obsession, he met Steven Adler, a high-energy, instinctive drummer. They became best friends, formed bands, broke up, and tried again. Nothing stuck. But Slash kept getting better. He didn't need anyone to tell him, he could feel it. One day, he played a Van Halen-style solo at school. The same classmates who once mocked him for his long hair and silence suddenly saw him in a new light. Without speaking, he was finally being heard. Music cracked open the first door out of his darkness. From that moment on, Slash never questioned his path. Guitar wasn't just a love, it was his survival. He didn't fantasize about fame or envision what he'd become. He just knew that every time he picked up the guitar, the chaos around him went silent. And for the first time in his life, he had control. Guns N' Roses and the rise. Slash was never made for stardom. He was made to play guitar, and to burn with it. After honing his craft through school bands and obscure projects, he entered the professional music world in the early 1980s. He joined a group called Road Crew with Adler. Together, they brought in Duff McKagan, a punk-influenced bassist from Seattle. That's when things began to move. Then Slash met Axl Rose and Izzy Stradlin, two eccentric misfits from Indiana. Something clicked. They formed Guns N' Roses in 1985. But it wasn't a clean start. Rehearsals ran all night. Fights erupted in garages. Days passed without food. Nights were fueled by cigarettes and stale bread. Yet through the chaos, Slash felt something he'd never felt before. The music inside him had finally found a home. Quickly, Guns N' Roses became infamous in the LA underground. Their performances were extreme. Their stage presence was volatile. Slash didn't preach. He didn't shout. He just played. And when he did, time stopped. Something raw and brutally emotional poured out of his fingers. In 1986, Guns N' Roses signed with Geffen Records. They recorded Appetite for Destruction in gritty conditions, but with blazing intensity. Slash's soul bled into every note. The riff in Welcome to the Jungle became a war cry. Sweet Child O' Mine started as a simple finger exercise. Slash transformed raw rebellion into a melody that haunted the world. When Appetite for Destruction hit the shelves in July 1987, it was largely ignored at first. MTV refused to broadcast its video due to violent imagery, and radio stations hesitated to play tracks laced with defiance. But the public was captivated. Sweet Child O' Mine soared to number 1 on the Billboard charts. Paradise City echoed through stadiums. Welcome to the Jungle became a cultural staple, featured in countless films, games, and TV shows. Slash became a legend without ever speaking a word. Unlike Eddie Van Halen, he didn't rely on showmanship or technical theatrics. Slash played from the heart. He wasn't chasing speed, he was channeling pain. Each solo felt like a cry from deep inside, an unspoken memory distilled into 6 strings and sound. The momentum continued. In 1988, Guns N' Roses released G&R Lies. Though controversial, it was a commercial success, selling millions. Slash began working with iconic artists like Alice Cooper and Michael Jackson. But the band's creative pinnacle came in 1991 with the dual release of Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. Dropping both albums on the same day, they claimed the number 1 and 2 spots on Billboard, a feat never seen before. Slash's fingerprints were all over those records. His solos in November Rain, his arrangements on Don't Cry, he wove the raw fury of rock with aching vulnerability. While Axl Rose wrote poetry laced with tragedy, Slash carved emotion into every riff, making the music bleed. Despite massive success and world-spanning tours, turmoil brewed behind the scenes. Slash's substance use deepened. Axl grew increasingly domineering. Internal conflicts delayed shows. Fans rioted. The press swarmed. The band stood on the edge of collapse. Yet Slash kept going. Drunk, exhausted, but ever committed, he stepped onto each stage with his guitar like it was part of his own body. Audiences didn't know he was falling apart, they just heard it in the anguish of every note. Following the Illusion era, Axl's behavior became more erratic. He obsessed over creative control. Songs would take weeks to finish over a single drum beat. Tours were delayed without warning. Most critically, he began to treat the band as his own personal property. Slash, driven purely by instinct and passion for the music, had no interest in control or power struggles. He only wanted the songs done right. But things unraveled. Axl pushed to replace bandmates. He wanted to shift the band's sound toward industrial rock. He sought total authority, including ownership of the Guns N' Roses name. That was the final straw. In 1996, Slash walked away. As the media frenzy erupted, Slash remained silent. Axl did not. In 2006, Axl publicly accused Slash of showing up at his home begging for a reunion and bad-mouthing Duff McKagan and Scott Weiland. The media jumped on it. Slash was painted as a traitor, a failure, ousted from the band he helped build. But none of it was true. In his 2007 memoir Slash, he clarified that he hadn't seen Axl since 1996. What cut deepest wasn't the lie, it was having to defend himself to his new bandmates in Velvet Revolver. What hurt the most wasn't Axl, Slash wrote. It was having to justify myself to people who were supposed to know me. For the next decade, Slash carried the weight of that break. He formed Slash's Snake Pit, then co-founded Velvet Revolver, earning a Grammy. But the emotional scars remained. Axl and Slash were polar opposites, one addicted to control, the other born to run free. They were destined to make immortal music and destroy each other doing it. Then, in 2015, the unimaginable happened. Axl Rose reached out to Slash. No PR stunt. No public statement. Just a private phone call, a real conversation after nearly 20 years. They buried the past. And in 2016, Guns N' Roses reunited for the Not in This Lifetime tour, a cheeky nod to anyone who thought the reunion would never happen. The tour became a juggernaut, running for years and grossing over $580 million. But for Slash, it wasn't about the money. What truly mattered was standing beside Axl again, guitar in hand, as the lights came up and the opening riff of Welcome to the Jungle exploded into the night. For once, after all the pain and years lost, the music was being played the right way, with the very people who first brought it to life. Despite personal tragedy, addiction, and declining health, Slash remained a silhouette in the spotlight, still, hunched over his Les Paul, face veiled by his hair, soul pouring into every note. But behind the iconic stance was a man suffering quietly. His body was failing. His heart was breaking. Yet he kept walking forward, toward his limit. Back in 1987, just as Appetite for Destruction began to gain traction, Slash flew to New York for a show at the Milford Plaza Hotel. There, he reunited with Todd Crew, the bassist of Jetboy and a close friend. Todd had just ended a painful relationship. The two drank, laughed, ate pizza, and rode through Central Park in a horse-drawn carriage. But then heroin came into the picture. Within 18 hours, Todd collapsed. Slash tried to save him, administering CPR, calling emergency services, but it was too late. Todd died in his arms. He was only 21. At the funeral in Los Angeles, Slash not only mourned a friend, he faced judgment. Friends whispered that he had brought Todd there, that he led him to his death. Slash never responded. But the guilt never left him. From that moment, his descent accelerated. When he wasn't on stage, he was drinking. When he wasn't drunk, he was using. If not high, he smoked. If not sleeping, he was screaming into the void, punishing himself for the friend he couldn't save. Eventually, the toll became undeniable. In 2001, while on tour, Slash collapsed. At the hospital, he was diagnosed with severe heart failure, cardiomyopathy caused by over a decade of alcohol and drug abuse. I was told I had maybe 6 days to live. Or 6 months. No more. Slash remembered the moment his heart, battered by years of abuse, began to swell dangerously, on the verge of rupture. The pain didn't strike like a blade, it crept in like a slow, merciless death. Doctors inserted a 7.5 centimeters defibrillator into his chest, ready to jolt him back to life should his heart miss a beat. There were no more roaring crowds, no more bottles, no more thunderous applause. Just a man, tethered to IVs in a hospital bed, staring at a blank ceiling, uncertain if he'd live to see the next morning. He didn't make any promises. No declarations of change, no dramatic rebirth. This wasn't a redemption arc, it was survival. He lived moment by moment, note by note, slowly regaining his footing. Years passed before he truly cleaned up, not out of fear of dying, but because he was simply too tired of living like he already had. In a later interview, when asked how it felt to have endured it all, Slash smirked and replied, "I'm not a health icon. I'm just a survivor." Personal life. While Axl Rose raged at the center of the spotlight, leaping off stages and stirring up chaos, Slash lingered in the shadows, silent, steady, playing like no one was watching. Yet behind his composed presence was a crumbling private world, dark and fractured, much like the melancholiest ballads he'd ever written. In 1992, he married model and actress Renee Saran. The union dissolved quietly 5 years later. There was no public fallout, just two people who had drifted too far apart to reconnect. For years, Slash drifted solo until he met Perla Ferrer, who gave him hope for something permanent. They married in 2001 and had 2 sons, London Emilio in 2002 and Cash Anthony in 2004. Fatherhood surprised him. He reveled in the everyday, taking the kids to school, building Lego sets, driving to football games. In a rare sober interview, Slash said, "Music saved me. But my kids gave me a reason to keep going." But that joy, too, began to slip away. Around 2010, as Slash attempted to rebuild his life and solidify his solo career, his marriage with Perla started to crumble. They filed for divorce twice and reconciled twice, but by 2014, it was over. Unlike his first marriage, this ending came with friction. Perla pushed for more financial terms, and Slash eventually agreed to pay hundreds of thousands annually in support, plus 1.8% of his income for the children through 2036. He didn't fight. He didn't place blame. He just wanted it over. "I didn't want my life to turn into a paperwork war," he said. "I just wanted peace." But peace, he admitted, was something he had never really known. Following the split, he reconnected with Megan Hodges, his former girlfriend from 1989. They hadn't spoken in decades but reunited in 2015, no wedding, no spectacle, just 2 people, broken in their own ways, finding each other again at the right time. But just as love returned, tragedy followed. On July 22, 2024, Slash shared a heartbreaking Instagram post. Megan's daughter, Lucy Blue Knight, whom he had loved as his own, had died at 25. The cause wasn't disclosed. His tribute read, "A gifted, dreamy, and sweet soul. This world was just too heavy for you." Hours later, Lucy's own scheduled post appeared, a sorrowful farewell filled with long-held pain. Nothing else needed to be said. Slash begged fans not to speculate, not to turn the loss into gossip. The man who had survived everything, drugs, alcohol, heart failure, fame, heartbreak, was leveled by the loss of the daughter he cherished. There was no guitar solo to soothe it, no note long enough to carry that kind of sorrow. He fell silent. He grieved the only way he knew how, by holding his guitar and letting the silence speak for him. Present life and legacy. Slash turned 60 with quiet grace. No party. No memoir. No sweeping reflections. He doesn't dwell on the past. Every day, he rises early, tunes guitars, trains his left hand, tweaks his gear, and writes new riffs like time never caught up to him. While many of his peers have retired to nostalgia, Slash continues to perform with his head bowed, curls hiding his face, Les Paul in hand, playing every show like it's the last. After the Not in This Lifetime Guns N' Roses reunion tour, which raked in over $580 million, he didn't pause. With Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators, he released a trilogy of deeply personal albums, Apocalyptic Love, 2012, World on Fire, 2014, and Living the Dream, 2018. These records weren't vanity projects, they were honest, emotional, raw. They stayed true to his roots, while pushing his music forward. In 2024, he made a surprising turn back to blues with Orgy of the Damned, his 6th solo album. It wasn't glossy stadium rock, it was thick with weight, soaked in memory and pain. Collaborating with artists like Brian Johnson, Steven Tyler, and Chris Stapleton, Slash didn't aim for hype. He chose musicians who'd also endured storms. The sound was not nostalgic, it was a cry from an old wound that never closed. Slash also started the SEN Festival, a blues event dedicated to charity. Through it, he raised funds for organizations like Equal Justice Initiative and War Child. He donates part of every tour's proceeds to causes helping war-affected children and victims of injustice. It's his way of giving back for the years he wandered lost. At home in Encino, Slash lives quietly. He has over 400 guitars, a collection of dinosaur models from his childhood, and a garage full of vintage cars. He still takes his kids to school, still plays Lego when he can. He's not chasing legacy. He's not delivering speeches. He's just being Slash, the man who never stopped playing. And his legacy? It speaks for itself. He may not be the flashiest or fastest guitarist, but he's one of the most influential ever. With his signature blend of blues roots and 70s/80s hard rock, he helped reshape the modern guitar solo. His leads on Sweet Child O' Mine, November Rain, Estranged, and Paradise City are etched into music history. That opening riff in Sweet Child is a hallmark of the 80s, November Rain is still one of the greatest guitar ballads ever recorded. Slash's image, wild curls, top hat, sunglasses, and and Les Paul, has become a symbol recognized across the globe. It's been featured in everything from video games to fashion to comic books. Gibson's Slash signature models remain among the brand's bestsellers. Technically, he's celebrated for his feel, his ability to turn emotion into melody, his mastery of phrasing, and his expressive use of the wah pedal. He taught a generation to play with their hearts. Bedroom players, aspiring pros, rock stars, all tried to chase that sound. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Guns N' Roses in 2012, and he regularly lands on Greatest Guitarist lists from Rolling Stone, Guitar World, Kerrang, and more. But his true legacy is simpler. With a single note, you know it's him. In a world of digital gloss and filtered emotion, Slash remains raw, honest, and untamed. He didn't try to be a legend, he just never stopped being real. And that's exactly why he is one. Slash is proof that rock still has a soul. If you've ever felt lost, turn to music not for escape but for survival. Odds are Slash's guitar was one of the things that helped you hold on. If his music touched something in you, share your thoughts below, like the video, and subscribe, because there are still legends out there who play to live, and live to play.